Hi, you guys. Welcome to this week's episode of the Expand and Evolve podcast. I'm your host, Carly Pynchon, and if you've never been here before, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Today I was just feeling called to, I've gotten some questions about this, and I was feeling called to talk about just how we navigated separating with kids. So I did an episode talking all about just how I kind of made that decision and questions you can ask yourself if that's something that could be right for you. But when it comes to kids, that makes things a lot harder. And for me, honestly, it was the biggest reason why it took me so long to make the decision. I didn't want to disrupt their lives. I didn't want to change anything. I didn't want to ruin them. I didn't want to have this event be the thing that they remember forever. And they're like, oh my gosh. And then my parents divorced. And so this happened and this happened and this happened. And like everything everything that happens in their life after that be defined by that moment um, in a negative way. And if it defines their life in a positive way, obviously I'm okay with that. And I think as they grow, and that's our role as parents too, is how we parent them, I feel like has a really major impact on how a situation like this will impact them and their lives. And I think that your own emotional intelligence, your own emotional awareness, the way that you handle the situation is going to matter so much more than the actual action of separating. So I just wanted to share a little bit about how we navigated this, exactly what our process was with the kids. I don't even know why I feel like I need to say this, but I think anytime it comes to this kinds of things, there could be people who have opinions like it needs to be a professional or an expert or a therapist or something. I'm sharing my story of what I did using my mother's intuition, using the tools I have within me that I felt were best for our circumstance, for our situation. And you have to navigate your situation for what is best for you. And so with that, I guess I'll say, if you guys don't really know, it took a while for us to make this decision. But in 2022, it was about a year where I feel like we both knew it was coming, but we were just hoping for something magically to shift or change. And so in that year or year and a half that we were living together, very much like roommates, not in a loving partnership, not in a loving relationship, like so distant. Sometimes I was so cold and not nice. And that's not who I am, but it's who I became in our relationship. There was so much resentment. And it just became a situation where eventually I had a moment where I was like, okay, you can either stay in this to stay for the kids, or you can realize that, and this was the big aha moment for me, was when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm about to live out the relationship I saw my parents go through if I stay for the sake of staying for my kids. And that's when I went, I'm raising two boys. Like, I need them to see their mother loved, adored, ravished. They need to see how to treat a woman. They need to see their mother happy. They need to see a representation of a relationship that is going to be conducive to their growth and who they become. Like, the relationship that I saw is part of the programming and the just like allowance I had and the expectation I had for what a relationship was. And it also gave me that, oh, you just stay for the kids and you just stay together and you just make it work, even though nothing's working and there's no happiness and people are miserable. Like, no, you don't just have to stay for the kids. And is that really helpful? Like, if you're just staying for the sake of, oh, I got married, so we stay forever, or, oh, we have kids, so we have to stay together. I just want to tell you, no, you don't. Those two reasons, they're great reasons to stay together, but they should not be the only two reasons that you're staying together. And like for me, I just had to realize, okay, if I stay right now for the kids, I'm choosing to put my own happiness on the back burner. I'm choosing to not have the relationship that I know we both deserve, want, and are capable of. I'm choosing to do this for them instead of me. And just in those three things, like, look at the lessons that you're teaching, right? Like, if you're just staying together for the kids and you're just putting everything else into for other people and you're choosing to um, let go of the opportunity for your own happiness for them, like, that's something that they're learning also, that they should do things that don't feel right to them for other people. And I'm just one that I'm like, I don't subscribe. There's a bunch of bugs up there. I don't subscribe to anything that society says I should do. Like, I've lived my life that way. I did the things society said I should do. And I'm like, it didn't bring me happiness. It didn't bring me joy. It was me living externally for other people of what I thought I should be doing. And in this moment, I was faced with, what do you really want? And I did not, you guys, want to break up the family. Like, there's all those stigmas, like, oh, you broke up our family. All the things, like all the things that you hear and say, I've heard them, I felt them, I went through them. I went through the whole process of feeling all of that. And like, are my kids gonna be upset with me in the future? And are they gonna blame me? And are they going to hate me? Like, I had so many fears of what they might think, he might say, what other people might say, our families might say, friends might say, Instagram might say. All these other things were making me worry about making this decision. And I had to go, holy crap. Like, you're factoring in so many opinions and so many factors when all you need to really be focusing on right now is you and your kids. And so let's bring it back there to just focusing on you and your kids. And if you're listening to this, it's probably because you're going through something similar and you're like, how do I best navigate this for my kids? And what do I do? And I got totally off track. But what I wanted to really say too was I had to realize that by staying in the relationship for the kids, I was choosing to have my kids witness a relationship and potentially be the thing that they end up witnessing and seeing as the standard. And I was like, I don't want this to be their standard. I want them to see a relationship that is full of love and heart, and one where people, they treat each other well, and it's foundationally built on love, not a should, not that like we should stay together just because we're together. Like, no, we can have an amazing co-parenting relationship. We can still both be mom and dad. Me and Daniel had a great friendship, and I'm like, why couldn't we still be great friends if we're not physically together in a partnership anymore? So it was really scary, and that's why it took me so long, because had it just been me and Daniel, I probably would have been like, I know these things aren't working. Something's off. We need to break up. We need to split, whatever. But I was like, am I making the right decision? So again, I want to remind you, and I said this in my last episode about our separation, like, give yourself grace, give yourself time. This does not have to be a rushed decision. This can be something where I encourage you so much, like, have conversations together. Try to discuss this. Be like, if we don't fix this and like put effort here and like make this work, like, this is what our reality is going to be like. Do we want that? And if you both don't want that, then like, try to make it work together. Try to do all the things that you can. But if you're in your heart of hearts and in your gut, you know, like, you've done the things, or like the effort's not there and it's a one-sided thing, and you know separation is your next step, and now you're like, how do I navigate this with my kids? First, have a conversation together. Maintain their well-being at the forefront of how you navigate this whole thing. So this is a situation where, put your own pride aside. I don't care what he did. I don't care what you did. Both of you are the adults. And it's really funny that I'm going through this situation now too, because when I was younger, before I'd ever had to navigate this, before I ever had kids, I would witness these relationships and how they put their kids in the middle as this like pawn to try to like win over the child, or like putting the child, trying to make them pick a side. Putting relationships in front of their children. So like, oh, I'm single now, so I'm going to put 900 men in front of the importance of my children. Like, I witnessed this in other people's situations, and it broke my heart. And I was just like, we're the adults. We are the adults. Be the adult. Like, you have a responsibility to be an adult, which means both parties. I don't care if someone cheated. The worst thing, if there's abuse and you need space and you need, like, you cannot physically see each other be together, that's fine. But if it's like, he did this and she did that and then so I'm not talking to him. No, we can't even see each other. We're not dropping off. We can't say hello. We can't send a text. Like, that's ridiculous. That is so ridiculous as adults. Like, I'm sorry, but you have children and they come first. So if that's the behavior, like, stop it. Become adults. And if you are the one that's being mature and the other person is being immature, you cannot control the other person, but do your freaking best to keep the peace between you two, because this matters for your children. Your kids should never have to feel like they have to choose between which parent. Like, oh, if I act this way in front of mom, like then dad might get upset. Absolutely not. They should just be able to be, and nothing should shift in that regard. So, how we navigated it, basically, we decided we were going to separate. And then the first day that he was in his new place, we all went together. So, he had started moving in, he had started getting stuff ready. And then the first night he was going to stay in the new place, we went over with the kids together. We went and picked toys together for dad's place. We had dinner together in dad's place. We spent time together there. And my biggest goal here was I never want them to feel like mom's house means no dad and dad's house means no mom. So I wanted to make sure that they were still feeling like that family dynamic of mom and dad, that there wasn't this separation of when I'm with dad, there's no mom, and when I'm with mom, there's no dad. I wanted them to feel like, yep, we still do family stuff. Yep, there's some separation because dad works and mom works, and I have to travel sometimes for work. So they're with dad and they're used to that. So they're used to me being away sometimes. They weren't used to him really being away. So he wasn't working full time before. So he was home a lot. And so when he first was not around as much, they were like, where's dad? I'm like, he's working. Because every day when they'd ask, he was working. So I'd be like, he's just at work today. And when they had a question about like, why were we getting this new place? We made it fun. So we were like, instead of saying, we're like, you've been wanting like, because my kids always tell me like, we want a bigger house. Our house is too small. And I'm like, okay, don't worry. I'll just work on that for you. But I like it because it expands my vision and their vision. And we look at like, $15 million homes together every single time. Like I'll be looking through all these homes. This is just a funny thing. And they're like, I like that one. And it's always the most expensive. And I'm like, you guys are hilarious, but thank you because it's pushing me to continue expanding my vision. Anyways, so we've looked at houses before and stuff. And so when he was moving into his, we were just like, daddy's getting a new house. And the way I said it was, I'm like, how we have the Canada house and the California house? Daddy's going to have a new house now. So now you have 3 houses. Like, this is so fun. We're going to keep adding houses. And I want more rental property. So it's something fun and easy. And obviously you may not have another house that your kids have already lived in, but you could still like make it fun. Like kids don't understand relationships and sexual dynamics. And like, they don't get that. They just see you as mom, dad, my caregivers who are here for me. And so make it fun. Like anything, make it a game. Be like, oh my gosh, yay, we have a new house. This means you get to pick out new toys. Like, what blankets do you want for your new beds? You're going to have 2 beds. Like, make it fun, make it exciting. It doesn't have to be this like, oh, let's sit down. I'm about to ruin your life. Everything in your life is about to change. And nothing that you know as your life right now is how your life is going to be. And so that's it. Like, imagine this is how I feel. And I'm sorry if this is what you've done or like, and anyone who's had been a child of like parents who have separated or divorced, you may remember this because I think I always heard this like, oh, we had to sit the kids down and have the talk and let them know we were separating and like we weren't going to be together anymore and we weren't going to be a family anymore. And whatever, you know exactly what I'm talking about, how people have said that they say these things. And I'm like, to me, that is the most traumatic thing that you could do, more so than the divorce and the ridiculousness that can happen between parents that they put on their kids. That moment to me, like that's the traumatizing part because they're being sat down and being told your world as you know it is about to change forever. And that's full of so much unknown and it creates so much insecurity. And as a child, it's really your basic needs have to be met. Like your root of safety, security, love, caregiving, like that is threatened. And when that is threatened, that can rock someone's entire situation. So regardless if they're 3, 5, 12, 18, doesn't matter. To do that sit down talk, like I understand when they're older, if you're like, okay, we've got to talk to the kids and like tell them this is what we're doing. But it doesn't have to be this, your life's about to change forever and it's super sad and depressing. Like, especially when they're little, you definitely don't need to do that. In my opinion, like I don't see where the value is in that. Like you keep their day to day as same as you can. As they start to notice things, then you explain them. But typically they're not really going to notice big changes. Like my kids, like he was gone a little bit. And so they were like, where is he? I'm like, he's at work. And that was that. There was no further question. So I don't need to explain more to them that they're not even ready to understand or hear. So anyways, so the first night, that's what we did. We went to his place. We all hung out together. We had dinner together, got new toys. So again, made it fun. Like, okay, dad's house, this means you get to have new toys there. What special toys do you want to have there for that bedroom that like you're not that we don't have at mom, so that you have something fun to go play with there. So again, we just made it fun. We kept it light. There were moments that were really freaking hard, really emotional, really difficult. The kids are 4 and 5. They definitely pick up on emotions. And when they could feel Daniel's sadness and when he was having really hard days, um, Daxton is so empathetic. He could feel that. And I remember this one day, Daniel was leaving to go to his place and he was so upset and he walked out crying and he didn't hear Daxton yelling, Daddy. Oof. And ooh, I didn't think that was, I knew it might bring up emotion. But I have to go out after this, so I can't start crying. And he was yelling, Daddy, Daddy. And he started like screaming. I've never heard him react like this. Okay. It's reliving the moment. Anyways, Daniel was crying and Daxton ran out and I was like, Daniel, stop. And so he couldn't hear Daxton screaming for him, but he heard me. And he was just like, I just want to give you a hug. Oh, it was so sweet, but it was like everything Daniel needed in that moment was like that love and to know that he cares. Like he loves him, he cares, he wants him still here, you know? And like there were hard moments. I'm not going to say everything was easy and you can just make it fun. There were moments like that that were really hard. And then I would sit with Dax and be like, did you feel like Daddy was really sad? Like, is that why you wanted to give him a hug? Or like, why were you chasing him? He's like, yeah, I really needed to give him a hug. He seemed sad. So just having those conversations, there was moments where I was crying. And then they'd be like, what are you crying? And like Maddox gets upset when I cry. He's like, stop crying. Why are you crying? Where Daxton goes like, oh, Mom, why are you sad? Like they're just different. Maddox is my little protector guy who like doesn't want, like wants to keep me in a bubble, I feel like. And then Daxton is so like, oh yeah, she's crying, whatever. But when I would cry, I didn't try to just keep it all together for the kids and stay happy. Like if I felt sadness, I showed them sadness. If I felt grief or anger, whatever feeling, like I would use my words to explain it to them. The same way that we want our kids to use their words and explain what they're feeling to us, I did that. So as the adult, like you're showing them how to navigate a really tough situation. You can explain your emotions to them. You can say, I feel really sad today. Like I really miss Dad. Or like, this feels really like challenging. Like there's a transition and there's change and like that can feel difficult sometimes. You have to talk about it in the way that they are ready for based on their age. And only you can know that as their parent. But I just want to tell you, like, trust yourself, trust your gut, trust what you feel is right. Come from the heart. If you're not in your heart and you're in a really reactive, angry, crazy state and you're activated up here, breathe, like take 3 deep breaths, get yourself into your heart to feel with them, to explain to them, to have a conversation with them at their level. That's the best thing I would say for that. And I also just want to say there's going to be times when you're first solo parenting and you now have separated and like sadness might show up, rage might show up, anger might show up. You are navigating all of those emotions. And there were moments where I snapped on my kids because, oh, didn't know that was going to bring up emotion too. Because you guys, when you can't emotionally regulate, how are you going to emotionally regulate your child? That's what our biggest role is as parents, is like we are trying to navigate our own emotions, regulate our own emotions, and then we have to show up for these children to also regulate theirs. And so in the really hard days and those really hard moments where I was feeling emotionally taxed, like I couldn't take anything else on, there were moments where they would be crying and I was like, like, or they would do something and I would feel so much anger. And there were moments where I was really loud, like I screamed at them. I scared them because my voice got so loud. I had so much rage within me in these moments. And again, after Rape moved through, I was like, I'm so sorry. I was scared. Like that scared you. I feel so much anger right now and I'm having a tough time. I would just use the words that they can understand too to explain it and then apologize and be like, that wasn't okay. I'm not mad at you. I'm just feeling angry. You know, when you feel angry, and I would always relate it back to, you know, when this happened, you felt so angry. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's what I'm feeling right now. Sorry, I was so loud. So, like, again, as you're navigating these big emotions, you don't have to hide them. You just have to try to stay on the same page and like allow them to understand. And again, it's based on where they're at and like those conversations that you can have. So, anyways, that was what we did for the first day. And then my biggest thing, I guess, is just I didn't want to shift anything. Like I wanted to keep their life as same as I possibly could. So I haven't taken down any pictures of me and Daniel within the house. I didn't want to change anything. As that big change was happening, I didn't want to add more change. So everything in the house stayed the same. Their routine stayed the same. The things we did stayed the same. The picture stayed the same. Like I didn't want it to feel like this massive transition of change. Obviously, if you aren't in that situation where like you get to stay in the house, they get to move out, or vice versa. I know that there's sometimes moms move out, dads stay in the house. What matters is that their environment stays as same as possible. But if you're about to leave and you have to take your kids to a new place, you would just transition that to, you know how like we have that house with daddy, like now we get to make a new house and you would just make it fun with you. Does that make sense? So trying to keep things as same as you can. And then if there's like big transitions that have to happen, like I completely understand that too. It's how you show up for them. Like if you show up and there's gonna be moments where you're not secure and you aren't safe in your own emotions and you can't regulate 1000%. But if you can show up for them and be there for them as best you can, they're gonna be okay. They're gonna be great. Like this doesn't have to be something that ruins their life. It could actually be super transformational. And I don't know what you believe in, but I kind of at this point really truly believe like our kids are souls that came here and chose us. They chose us perfectly with every situation that's going to unfold for their own learning, for their own teaching, for their own benefit, for their own growth. And the way I see it, I feel like is me choosing this, right? I chose me. Like through making this decision, I chose me. And how many decisions in your life have you not chosen you? Even from a young age. We were taught so many times like to choose people outside of ourselves or act in a way to please others. And for me, I'm like, by me choosing me and me choosing to do what's best for me and me choosing my own happiness and me choosing what I feel is best for myself and for them in the long term, because who I was in those 2 years where I was trying to just stay was horrible. Like the energy that they would have been in, like our tension, you guys, was so intense. They were sitting in that energy all of the time. So if you're in a relationship where you're fighting all the time and it's super toxic and you're never happy and you're always like, and or you're sad all the time because you're together and it's awful, do you want your kids to look back like, yeah, mom was always sad? Or you were emotionally unavailable because you were so detached from everything going on to try to make it through? No. You want them to feel connected to you. You want them to feel like remember you as happy and joyful and fun and to have good memories together. And if in your relationship right now there are no good memories and you are treating each other horribly, just ask yourself if maybe it would actually be better and more peaceful for both of you to be apart. And is that really the worst thing, to have parents not be together if both people are happier not together? Like to me, I'm like, there's nothing bad about that. It can actually be beautiful. And you're teaching them a lesson in choosing you and choosing your happiness and showing them how to grow and work on yourself and the practices that you start doing when you are healing. They're witnessing that. Your actions are going to be the things like so often I've heard this before. I think it was Ed Milet, but like actions for kids are caught. They're not taught. So you can say things, yes, and your word can be powerful and what you teach them can be powerful, but a lot of the time they're going to catch it from what you're doing. Like the same way when I start planking on this yoga mat or doing yoga and Maddox like watching me and doing it, the same way he'll be able to remember like my mom chose me and it gives him permission to also choose him. I want my kids to grow up choosing them. I don't know what's best for them. If they can stay in their own true inner knowing, not listening to other people, they know what's best for them. I could have a totally different perception and opinion on something, and maybe I can see it from a high level if they're making choices that are not aligned with them. But if they're in their true sense of alignment, they're in their heart, they're in their inner knowing, they are going to make the best possible decisions for them and they're going to learn along the way, just like I am. So just know that like your journey is also shaping that, and it's who you become through this journey and through this transition. Like could be the best thing ever for your kids. I don't know. And like, that's just what I choose to believe, in the same way that I'm like, I know the relationship that I want to be in. I want it filled with love. I want it filled with just, I know, obviously I'm not Delulu. Like, there's gonna be moments that are not happy, but there's healthy conflict. Like, healthy conflict is normal. There's times where I feel frustrated with my kids. There's times where I feel angry with my kids. There's times where I feel love with my kids. There's times where I'm annoyed with my kids. Like, you're probably going to feel all those normal human emotions in a relationship too. They're all going to show up. They're normal. Again, it's like, I want to be in a relationship where that relationship that we're in becomes the standard for what my kids expect in their relationship. I don't want them expecting like, oh yeah, marriages are just loveless and you don't sleep together and you sleep apart and you fight all the time and you can't stand each other and they're full of resentment and anger and backhanded comments, tearing each other down, like jokingly. No, I want them to see respect, admiration, team effort. I want them to see support. I want them to see two people who have each other's back and are so rooted in love and choosing each other, and then also working together and like being the example for the kids. And I said this in another one, but Sandy and Wade, when I was with a couple of couples and I watched their love, I realized like, oh, somewhere along the way, I didn't think this was real. I didn't think that couples dance together and like actually show up loving each other, wanting to be. I knew couples wanted to be together. Okay. Like, I've been in love before. My leg is fully numb, you guys, the way I'm sitting. Obviously I know relationships are real. Love is real. I've been so deeply in love. Like, me and Daniel, I loved him so much, all the things. What I mean is, I guess it's intimacy. Like, I was able to see intimacy and closeness represented, and it made me go, what? Because I didn't have that as a representation from my parents. Like, I still don't. And I also have realized, I'm like, I've seen a lot of surface level conversation. I haven't really seen deep conversation through a partnership. And so that was the relationship I was in. And I remember standing in the kitchen one day and I just went, no, right now, I am the defining factor. If I choose to perpetuate this cycle through living out the exact same thing that my parents did, or I get to make the choice to change it and to stop it and to create something different for my kids to see, so that their standard is one of what relationships should be. And yeah, anyways, that's just kind of how I made that decision. And so since then, there was really tough times, you guys. Like, Daniel was really upset with me for certain actions, and that we weren't really getting along really great then, and we weren't really acting like the best of friends then, but we never acted disrespectfully in front of our kids. Still had completely, what's the right word for that? Like, yeah, whatever. I'll use respectful, cordial, maybe. Conversations. Like, he still came in the house and would get the kids, and then we would sometimes still go together to his house. Like, if they're having a hard day and they're like, I don't want to be with daddy, I want to be with mommy, then we adjust. So I also am not someone who just subscribes to, and it's Friday night at 4 p.m. and so Sunday at 4 p.m. Like, this is how it is. Regardless of your needs, this is how it is. No, like, if they're really showing like they need me, then sometimes we'll go, like this happened the other weekend after I came home from Bahamas. They didn't want to go there. They wanted us to all be together. And so we were like, okay, let's go to dinner together. Okay, let's go to the park together, until they felt ready to hang out with dad. And so be willing to be flexible. I think, and I've heard this lately too. I have a friend, and her husband's like, if our family, like, you chose to break up the family, so you don't get the benefit of still being a family. And I'm like, that is so sick and twisted as an adult, that you're going to be like, my kids don't get a family because I want to punish the woman because we decided to break up. Like, no, you can still be a family. You will always be family. Those kids, you are their family. So regardless of mom and dad, why can't you still do that? Obviously, if you're willing and the other person is not, that's on them. and hopefully they can shift and change and grow. But that's probably why you broke up with them in the first place. So, anyways, but ideally, right? Like trying to help them understand, okay, this is for the benefit of your kids. Put your kids first. Like, stop being selfish. This is not about you. This is about your kids. So when it comes to the kids situation, it's about them. And then of course there's other situations where you're going to choose you. But in that, I would say like still do things as a family. If you guys can, don't have super rigid rules. Like if your kids are needing you, go there on a Wednesday night. Like there's been times where the kids ask for Daniel. I'm like, hey, what are you doing after work? Because they want you to come play on the trampoline. He comes over and plays on the trampoline. Like it doesn't have to be rigid. There's been nights where I'm still cooking and I'm like, eat. Like you're here, eat. Like you can still be nice and loving and good to each other, regardless if you're together or not. So I guess that's just what I would say is minimize the changes that you can, make their life feel as similar and like as same as normal or as normal as you can. Support them in that. And then also I'm realizing I gotta go. So I need to end this. But minimize the changes, make things feel as similar as normal. You do not have to have that sit down conversation. Navigate the questions as they come. Show your emotions openly when you need to. If you have a cry in front of them, explain to them why you feel like crying. Just be normal human, right? Like you're navigating this, as are they. If they feel like they're having lots of outbursts and just like big emotional outbursts, talk them through it. Be like, ask them questions. Like, do you think this is showing up because of this? Like, do you feel like you miss daddy right now? Are you noticing, like, does something feel different? Ask them questions that you think they can kind of talk through, and have those conversations. Show them that, like, you can talk about it and navigate it and dig a little. And then I would also say, do things together as a family. Just because you're deciding not to be in a relationship does not mean that you need to stop doing things as a family. So put them first. Put your kids first. Be adults. Don't act like children. I know there's a lot of adults who are still stuck in that childlike behavior. If you're listening to this podcast, you want to expand and evolve and grow into your highest self. And that means being a responsible adult who can be civil with each other and can be nice and caring and kind. Because if that's who you are as a person, there's no reason that you need to like withhold that just because someone's your ex, you know? You guys can still build that. And obviously me and Daniel are still working at this. I think he's still angry at me. And so it's not in the same place that I ideally would love it to be, but we've come a long way already. Yeah. And I would just say, put your kids first and know that you don't have to do things the traditional way. The way that you saw people split up in the past where it was that sit down conversation. It was very rigid and like week on, week off. And not that because those schedules can be really helpful. I'm not saying that's bad, but in that week on, week off, like if they need you, don't feel like just because it's their week, you can't go meet that need, you know? Like it's all about just showing up and meeting their needs where you can and prioritizing that. And my heart just goes out to the people who don't have supportive and cooperative partners, because when you're in that space where you're willing to be that person and they're not, that would be so freaking hard to navigate. And I also just want to say for the people who are listening to this, because they're trying to navigate how they're going to do this, giving up that control of knowing where your kids are, what's happening 24/7 is also really hard. But I had to stop worrying about all the what ifs for after we made the decision and start thinking about making that decision first. And if that's the decision I wanted to make, then I would navigate all those what ifs after. And that can be really hard too, because you think of like all these situations and circumstances and like the new girl coming in or the new guy coming in or the new person coming in and what's that going to be like? And like all the things like, and I had to just trust that it's all going to be perfect and best for them. And I also had to trust my partner where I was like, okay, like we're splitting, but you're not this horrible person. And maybe you guys are splitting from a really horrible person. And I would just say, if they're really terrible to you, keep note of all of it, because eventually you can. We have not gone to court. We haven't done anything like that. But if you're in a situation where they're really terrible and they're not fit to be a good parent, to me, I'm like, yes, having your parents in your life is important, but they don't need to spend a bunch of time with them. Like if their behavior is terrible and they're prioritizing drinking or drugs or they're abusive or they're narcissistic and terrible and like make your kids like the behaviors. Keep track of it all, because I don't think there's anything wrong with going. I would never encourage a fight. I would never encourage legal action unless you definitely need it. Like, we haven't taken any, actually. We haven't done any of that. Like, we didn't just separate. We're like, okay, we need an agreement and we need lawyers and we need this. No, we're just letting it flow. We're letting it figure itself out. We're figuring out what works for us. We're figuring out what works for them. And then when we're ready, we can take those steps. But right now, I'm like, I don't need to go file some paperwork and add those stressors to my life. Like, I just don't. So if you need that schedule because you're having arguments and fights, obviously that's different. But we just were able to be like, okay, you work 9 to 5. I don't. So I'll keep them weekdays. You can have them weekends. And then on, like, this is another thing. Weekends where he's like, okay, I need a life. Like, I want to go on a date, or I want to go out, or I want to go with friends. I'm like, cool, drop him off Saturday. Like, as long as I'm free, I'm like, I used to have my kids 24/7. I don't care. Drop them off. Like, it's totally fine. And the same way, like, sometimes I have calls Wednesday nights, and like, it's kind of worked where Wednesday nights he'll come over and hang out with them. So again, just be flexible. You don't have to do all those normal things that people used to do, where it was like, you get the agreement and then you have this schedule and you have this and you have this and you have this, and like, this is the way it is because this is the way it is. Like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. So prioritize them first, always. I'm sending you so much love. I really didn't say a lot in this episode, but I just wanted to kind of share our journey. And even, I don't know if we'll ever get here, but like, I invited him to come to Bahamas because I was like, just come. Like, it's okay. Like, we're with the kids. And he didn't end up coming, but I feel like it's still important that for me, I'm like, we can totally still be a family and they can still have mom and dad. They see us as mom and dad. They don't see us as husband and wife. They were too young. They don't understand that. So, yeah, anyways. Sending you so much love, because this choice is not easy. This decision is not easy. This is a really difficult situation to navigate. I feel for you. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life. But me and my kids now, we have so much joy. The person I was in those last 2 years, you guys, I was a ticking time bomb a little bit, and very on edge and very distracted with those thoughts all the time of what should I do, where once the decision was made because it felt like the right thing to do. And this is another thing, you could make the decision like, no, we're going to stay. Okay, well, that relieves stress too. If you're like, no, we're staying together. Okay, great. But like, our time together has been just so good. Like, our routine is so good. I'm not angry anymore thinking like, okay, I'm doing this. Why wouldn't you be doing that? Like, that was what showed up so much, was like, if I was brushing one teeth, I'm like, one of them's yelling for me. Why can't you go help them? Like, there was just so much feeling all the time and like frustration all the time. And now it's like, it's just me and that's just us. And we handle everything together. And I feel so much happier and I feel so much better and I feel so much more grounded and within myself, that it's better for them, because that's the energy they're around instead of all of that animosity and tenseness and tension and all that. So just know that, and your kids love you. And if you're a piece of crap or your partner's a piece of crap, trust, you don't need to say anything. Your kids will figure it out. Okay? So if you're being your best and you're showing up for them your best and you're loving them the best way that you can, they will feel that. They will know that. Trust that. Okay. Sorry. Hope that was kind of helpful. I had a bunch of notes. I didn't even look at them. I need to get going. I think that was it. Yeah. Basically, yeah. I just never said that we were splitting up. I wasn't like, mommy and daddy are breaking up. They don't even know what that means, right? So just keep what you say to their level of understanding. Love you guys. Best of luck. It's a really hard transition time if you're going through this. See you in the next episode.